Roosevelt Wicks, and I want to thank you for joining me, the Library Foundation, and the Austin Public Library for the Mayor's Book Club Read Local program. Traditionally, we recommend 1 or 2 books for Austinite to read as part of the Mayor's Book Club. This year, I'm thrilled to expand the Mayor's Book Club to include over 50 books published by Austin authors in 2020 that represent a wide range of forms and genre and include books for adults, children, and teens. This expansion of the program gives us the opportunity to promote Austin's rich literary history, the scenes, and particularly many Austin authors whose titles might not have gotten published or gotten the attention that they deserve due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I encourage you to visit the Library Foundation's website at austinlibrary.org for the entire list of titles and a complete schedule of virtual programs for the whole family that include author reading, book crush reading workshops, a poetry workshop series, and a picture book Palooza. Thank you again. Please enjoy the program and read local. Thank you.
Well, hello there. My name is Chris Barton. This is my dog, Ernie. I am an author right here in Austin, Texas. Ernie is not an author right here in Austin, Texas. I have been in Austin for most of my life. I grew up in a small town in Northeast Texas where I loved writing even when I was very young. In fact, right here, I have what I consider to be the first book I ever made. I made this when I was in 2nd grade. It's called The Ozzie Brothers Meet the Monsters. I wrote it and illustrated it. It's 2 pages long. You can read the whole thing on my website if you want to see it. What I have in this red binder is a collection of stories and illustrations I made with my friend JB when we were in middle school. We spent all year writing and illustrating a superhero parody, and the next year we spent writing and illustrating a soap opera parody. I've collected those to this day. In high school, I went on to work for the high school newspaper for 3 years. This is I still have my high school newspapers. And then what brought me to Austin was wanting to write for the Daily Texan, the UT student newspaper. And here I found I still have 2 of my press IDs from when I was a staff member of the Daily Texan. So not only writing, but writing as part of a community, as part of a team of writers, or having somebody that I share stories with. That's always been a really important part of my writing, and that's one reason why I'm so fortunate to be here in Austin, because Austin has a terrific community of authors and illustrators of books for readers of all ages. In fact, I'm married to another author. My wife, Jennifer Ziegler, writes very funny chapter books and novels for middle school students and high school students and elementary school students. So I write primarily picture books, but I don't write just one type of picture book. I have always loved, well, you can tell by the type of writing I did when I was growing up and up through college. I loved making up stories like the Ozzie Brothers Meet the Monsters, or those parody stories. I loved writing ridiculous fiction, but I also loved learning the truth and writing about the truth. And I studied history in college, so you can tell from my books that I've made, I love both of those things. I've never felt like I had to choose between writing ridiculous stories or writing seriously researched true stories. I write both types of books. And this year I have 2 new books, and in those books is an example of each type of those books that I like to write. The first book I'm going to tell you about is a fiction book. It's called Fire Truck versus Dragon. And the first thing I want to point out about this book and about all of my books is I write the words, I do not create the illustrations. I've worked with lots of different artists who have made the pictures in my books. The artist for this book, her name is Shanda McCloskey. And I have never met Shanda in person. I've talked with her on the phone. We've emailed back and forth, we've texted, but we've never met in person. And that's not at all unusual for picture book authors and illustrators. Usually the author and illustrator don't work side by side, don't work together as they're making the book, which comes in handy at a time like this when it's kind of difficult to work with other people. I'm making books right now with people who are over on the East Coast, who are in Europe, who are in Asia, and it's business as usual for us, because usually the author writes the words and then turns it over to the illustrator and they do their part of the story. So Shanda and I made this book separately, but we worked together as a team. And when I was writing Fire Truck versus Dragon, I had this idea of these two characters, a dragon and a fire truck. And dragons have, there might be something that comes to mind when you think of dragon. You're probably thinking of breathing fire, right? And when you think of a fire truck, you're probably thinking of putting out fire. So you've got these two characters with these skills that people really expect to see shown off by a fire truck and a dragon. And in fact, if you look at the back of the book, you'll see that these kids here, they have made a banner. And it says, today, who will win, dragon or fire truck? And they've listed the skills for both characters. On dragon's side, they've listed skill number 1, breathing fire. Skill number 2, more fire. Skill number 3, even more fire. Over here on fire truck side of things, they've written skill number 1, putting out fire. Skill number 2, dousing fire. Skill number 3, extinguishing fire. And that's really all the same thing, right? Yeah. Dragon says, is that all they think we can do? And fire truck says, there's a lot they don't know. So let's open it up and see just what they're talking about, because you can tell from the cover here, they're ready for this extreme showdown, a serious face-off right here. But you open up the cover, and they are just making ridiculous faces at each other. That is not what I had in mind for a serious showdown or an extreme face-off. Let's see if the next page gets any better. Well, this isn't better at all. Fire truck is going, ha, 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 ha. And dragon is going, hee, 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 hee. And these kids over here are saying, what is going on? And dragon says, it might surprise you that a fire truck and a dragon can in fact be good friends. Fire truck says, we get along great. Why wouldn't we? Dragon says, I know, right? I mean, what are dragons really good at? It's sort of obvious. It's completely obvious. And what are fire trucks really, really, really good at? Put the two of us together and you can guess why. Everyone loves having us at campfires and cookouts and barbecues and birthday parties, because what gets lit on fire at a birthday party? The candles on a cake, right? What gets put out at a birthday party? The candles on a cake. Wouldn't you like to see a fire truck and a dragon take care of that business? So that's what I had in mind when I came up with the idea for fire truck and dragons, that you would have these expectations of what a fire truck and a dragon are really good at, but maybe you don't get exactly what you're expecting. Maybe fire truck and dragon don't realize that's what's expected from them. Now, I don't remember exactly where I got the idea for fire truck versus dragon, but I do remember when I first began writing it. I began writing that book while I was walking Ernie. He was here a minute ago. I don't know where he is, but when I came up with the idea, he was right there at the end of the leash. I was walking my dog, and I got the idea for the story. And when you write with whatever tool you have handy. Well, I had my phone, so I began talking into my phone, dictating into my phone what the story would be, how the story would start. So that's, to me, the important thing about that. Well, there's two important things. One, getting exercise, going out walking or running, leaving my earbuds behind, my headphones behind, that's a great way for me to get story ideas and for me to solve storytelling problems. But also, there are so many different tools you can use to write. You don't have to have any one particular type of tool, not a particular type of pen, not a particular type of paper or device. Whatever you have available, you can probably use to write a story, because you're going to need to write that story over and over and over to make it as good as you want to, right? So Fire Truck versus Dragon is only one of two books I've had out this year. And not only is my other book out this year a nonfiction book, and so as opposed to fiction, it's much, much, much more serious than Fire Truck versus Dragon. 25 years ago in Oklahoma City, there was a terrible tragedy. There was a bombing of a building in downtown Oklahoma City. And several years ago, when I visited Oklahoma City to speak to students at schools, I had a chance to go to the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum. And I was so so struck by the storytelling that they did at that memorial and museum to tell the stories of the people who were hurt or who died or who came to the rescue and how the community moved forward after something really, really difficult. I was inspired to learn more about that and learn more about how a community comes together after a tragedy and memorializes and moves forward, and what help looks like after a really difficult situation, and how sometimes people who have received help are those who provide help next time somebody needs it. And that led to my book, All of a Sudden and Forever, Help and Healing After the Oklahoma City Bombing. And I tell people this book is not so much about the bombing itself as it is about recovery from and memorialization of a tragedy, whether it's a big public tragedy or a smaller private tragedy that's at the center of somebody's world. And let me just read you a little bit of this book. And as with all my books, this was illustrated by someone besides me. This was illustrated by another illustrator whom I've never met in person. Her name is Nicole Shu. This is her very first book. And here's how All of a Sudden and Forever begins. Sometimes bad things happen and you have to tell everyone. Sometimes terrible things happen and everybody knows. One April morning in 1995, one of those terrible things happened in Oklahoma City. There was a man with a bomb in a big truck. He parked the truck in front of a big building in the middle of the city. He walked away. The bomb exploded. 168 people died. All of a sudden and forever, so much was ruined. The awfulness of that moment can never be undone, but the awfulness of that moment is not the end of the story. It is true that many people were hurt in many, many ways. Some lost a cousin, a niece, a nephew, an uncle, an aunt, a grandfather, a grandmother, a sister, a brother, a mother, a father, a daughter, a son, a baby named, but not yet born. Some lost friends, neighbors, folks they used to see every week or every day. It is true as well that some who survived had their bodies broken in ways large and small. Some suffered damage to their minds and spirits. Some who rushed in to help saw horrible things they would never forget. Some had to leave nearby places they loved, homes, churches, a library, without knowing when they could safely return. Now, one thing I learned when I visited the Memorial Museum was that there is a tree located right across from the building that was blown up. And it survived. It was an American elm tree, and it survived the bombing. And it was taken care of after the bombing. And it grew, and it thrived. And if you go to the Memorial and Museum today, you can see this big, healthy tree that represents how a community can survive and grow and thrive. And one of the most beautiful things about this tree, about the survivor tree in Oklahoma City, is that seedlings have been distributed to people who have come to Oklahoma City for the memorial service every year. I went last year and I got a seedling, and on my back porch I have a seedling from the survivor tree in Oklahoma City. I have loved taking care of that seedling this year, watching the leaves come back out in March this year at a time when we really needed some hope. And so I've thoroughly, it's meant so much to me to have that tree to take care of at this time. Now for both of those books, there are a lot of differences between writing a fiction book and writing a nonfiction book. There's research, for instance, but there are some things that are very much in common. You never get it right on the first try. Every story I've had published, I've written again and again and again. There's so many ways to make a story right. The more times you try to make it better. So you really owe it to yourself as a writer to do that. But something else that these books have in common, really all of my books have in common, is that I haven't written them because I've been an expert in what I'm writing about. I start off each of my books with a lot of questions and a lot of curiosity. And writing a book is my way of answering those questions and satisfying that curiosity. And so, for instance, for Fire Truck versus Dragon, my question was, not so much who will win a competition between Fire Truck and Dragon, but is it really a competition? And if it's not a competition between Fire Truck and Dragon, what is it? And if they don't do what readers think they're going to do, what do they do, and how are readers going to respond to that? And for all of a sudden and forever, I wanted to really understand how people recover from something so very difficult. And are there things that, as we encounter difficulties in our own lives, in our own era, in our own age, as we encounter tough things, what lessons can we take from the people of Oklahoma City? So remember, you don't have to be an expert in what you're writing about. What you need to do is have questions and have curiosity. And if you ask those questions and you find answers to those questions and you write down those and you come up with more questions, before you know it, you're going to have a story. Now, both of these books are available in lots of places, especially in the Austin Public Library system. I have been a card-carrying member of the Austin Public Library for so many years. It's one of my highlights of each week when I go pick up books curbside at the Austin Library nearest my home. So remember, you can get Fire Truck versus Dragon and All of a Sudden and Forever at the Austin Public Library. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today to learn about these books, and I look forward to seeing you in person. Take care. Bye-bye.